Welcome back to the Insurance Leadership Podcast. Today we have Chad Hogan with Quotit on the podcast. He is going to be hitting on AI and how it's going to be changing our industry. This is definitely an episode you do not want to miss. With that, let's go ahead and jump into the show. Chad, thanks for being on the show today, man.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Second round, you're back here again.
I must have said something right the first time, right?
Well, we had several different people that were bringing up last time we talked, kind of towards the end, we got into more kind of the AI side.
Yes.
And as you know, in the industry, there's so much stuff that we don't know, and it's still new, and how does it apply with insurance? And so it kind of got all the discussion started. I said I got to get Chad on here again, so we thank you. Give the people who might not have listened to the last episode, give your background, what got you into the industry, and then kind of also give your kind of background with Quotit, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Third generation in the insurance industry. My grandfather, my father, and now me. Now, I don't sell insurance, but certainly we support technology for insurance agents. So always had a passion for technology, and I think that became the intersection of how I ended up where I'm at from a technology standpoint with Quotit, Quotit, our agency management platform, and now our new Comissio commissions platform. And so I think kind of the two passions came together, nurture and nature, right? Nature being insurance was kind of born into it, and I've always been a fan of technology. There's a kind of an old joke that it's like no one ever graduates college and says, I'm going to be an insurance agent. But they figure it out, and it's a great industry. And so from a technology standpoint with Quotit, going on 20 years in the technology space, and watched the evolution from quoting being a novelty to now it's ubiquitous, right? The online enrollment, it's a requirement. If you're a carrier and you don't have that capability, your products aren't being sold anymore. And so, it's been a fun evolution, and I think there's some really fun technology coming our way. We've got a new crop of agents that are coming in from kind of the ones that have now graduated college. They had their first job, and they've now ended up in the insurance industry.
That's right.
And they're realizing that there's a whole world out there that has not yet adopted what many other industries have. And so I think that's pushing technology vendors, it's pushing carriers, and I think that's all a good thing. And so I'm excited to kind of talk about what we see from a future standpoint, where we think the industry's going from a technology standpoint, and again, happy to be here, Ryan.
For those who don't know who Quotit is, give a quick background, because I know previously was Nat Gen, now Allstate, kind of a lot of stuff going on there too. Give a little 30-second overview on that as well.
So I think in the 20-year span that I've been with the company, I've had 6 different paychecks, but I've had the same job. And so Quotit is a technology provider for the health insurance industry. So started off in the group benefits space, still have a huge presence in the group quoting market in California and a few other states. Branched into the individual market, and then into Medicare and ancillary. And so really I look at Quotit and some of our other supporting products is, we're the only single source supplier of quoting and enrollment in the insurance industry. There are point solutions, whether you're looking for Medicare, there's vendors that focus on Medicare. If you're focused on ACA, there's vendors that are focused on ACA. There's really no one in the off exchange or ancillary market to bring all that together, but we've brought together on and off exchange, under and over 65 Medicare Advantage, as well as the ancillary products in a single agent and agency distribution platform. So that is...
I did not realize you guys were the only one touching all the pieces of the pie, so to say, to be able to help people with quoting enrollment.
And that's
awesome.
And that's for those agencies that have diversified their product line and said, I can't be a single source commission, especially with the new Medicare rules coming down potentially. Wanting to diversify the portfolio there, having all those options for the consumers, it's a great tool.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, let's jump into some of that type stuff. I want today to speak more futuristic, AI, what's in planning, what's in thought, what's kind of looking forward. We were even before the podcast kind of hitting some of the different things that are coming out from legislation type stuff. So I know nothing's 100% yet, but maybe we can kind of hit on that. What are you guys doing from a standpoint of trying to use AI or other technology to make the broker or the consumer's experience better from a Quotit standpoint, from that technology? What are you doing to try to help improve that experience?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways that we're looking at it. So large language models kind of seems to be the fit that AI has found, like a Chat GPT or things like that, where you're consuming large amounts of written material, and then through neural networks and other things, being able to disseminate that and create kind of a common output, right? So that's large language model seems to be where a lot of kind of the things are going there. The other piece of it is kind of automation, right? So if you look at like what Microsoft's done with their Copilot product recently, where you can go in and I can tell Excel, create this type of chart. And it translates that that language model
I didn't even know
into
about
an activity.
That's awesome.
Right? So I used that the other day for creating a workflow chart that I needed to do, and I had all the data, and I said, give me this kind of model, this kind of chart. It chugged on it for 30 seconds or so and gave me 3 or 4 options and says, which of these do you like? I mean, that was 2 hours worth of Excel work, just a year or two ago. So we're looking at those two things: large language models and process automation. From an AI standpoint, how can we bring that to the insurance industry? So from a large language model, we're looking at carrier benefits. And we're looking at how do we start doing analysis around plan comparison and value of plan to premium, so that we're almost creating a pseudo actuarial value of the plan to present and say, hey, this plan has a richer benefit set on the whole than maybe this plan. Yeah. But this plan from a premium standpoint is 20% less, right? So, and kind of not necessarily tell the consumer or the broker what to buy, but to present kind of comparative data to help the consumer or the broker better make a decision for what plan to buy and what's the right fit. So I think that's kind of around the large language model. Around the process automation piece is there's a lot of inefficiencies in the broker payment, hierarchy management, and contracting processes, right? It's a huge overhead for a lot of agencies. That's right. And so being able to take and do some process automation around gathering data, filling out forms, those kind of things to make that process simple. Yep. I mean, we've always been able to do one-to-one field mapping, but being able to quickly and accurately adapt to, like, for example, reading a commissions agreement and pulling out what are the percentages that should be paid versus the agent having to try and figure out to load into our commissions platform. I upload my commission doc and it's all there, and it kind of consumes that and then fills in the values appropriately. So those are kind of just some examples of things, and we haven't even started to talk about sentiment analysis, compliance management around call recording, and all of those kind of things, which we touched a little bit on the last call. But I mean, there's some really exciting technology out there.
We were talking a little bit about some of the regs, right? Yeah. Hit some of that type stuff.
Yeah.
What you see could potentially be some of the stuff that's recently come out, and how that could impact that process.
Yeah. So I think if I were to kind of pull together a couple of salient regs that have come out from various parts of, whether it's FCC on some of the one-to-one lead gen rules, whether it is the new Medicare compensation rules that are being proposed, it's the new WBE or web broker regs that just got, or guidance, I should say, it's not regs, right. Guidance that was released a couple of weeks ago. CMS and the agencies are definitely looking at the insurance industry with a critical eye. Okay. They've heard consumer complaints around lead gen. Obviously, the FCC stepped in and put a big kibosh on that one, right? They've seen the, I want to say, excess in the Medicare compensation side, right? As a lot of agents pivoted back and forth there, right? And now they're looking at kind of how data is presented to consumers around the shopping experiences and those kind of things. And so, if you really look at that, I think they're really trying to address everything from lead gen through the enrollment process and into the compensation, right? They're putting their foot in the entire...
They're touching the whole thing.
They're touching the whole thing. And, I think this is an opportunity for agencies to really, I won't call it step up their game, but differentiate themselves in operating with vendors, in operating, whether it's on the lead gen side, the quoting and enrollment side, compensation side, align themselves with companies that also have a very compliant philosophy, because that's going to ultimately reduce the burden there. The other side of it is agents need to be vocal and be active, right? I mean, there's a number of trade groups out there, but these are things that are near and dear to our hearts. We respond to CMS for comments, right? And it's a really cool process if you've never responded and seen your words quoted back to you in a regulatory process. You're like, oh, okay, I can actually have an impact.
Have a voice here.
And,
that's right.
And more so than anything, especially what we've seen on the CMS side, is they are very open to industry feedback. They want to talk to brokers. They want to talk to agencies. They want to talk to carriers. And I do believe that in many cases, they're trying to better the process from a consumer experience, right? They are trying to make it better. Now, that may not create the best broker experience.
Right.
That's right. But I do believe that from a regulatory standpoint, a lot of what I've seen is driving toward that better consumer experience, which I think at the end of the day, all of us agree, things like lead gen had to be cleaned up.
I agree, 100%.
Right?
100%.
Websites, rogue websites that just grab health plan data and start publishing it without any,
100%.
any tie to it.
That's right.
These are the kind of things that these regulations are meant to step in on.
So if a broker wanted to come in and make a comment, right, want to respond to a reg, and we have a team that does that at our office, but I've never been involved in the process. I'm asking even for me too. What would that look like? How would you even go about that? Is it posted on CMS and you can actually go in there and give comments based off that? What's that look like?
So there's a site called the Federal Register where all regulatory agencies publish new regulations.
Okay.
And you can go in and sign up for an alert when, for example, I look at CCIO, the Center for Consumer Insurance Information Oversight, the ones that manage the Federal Healthcare Exchange. Anytime a new reg is published by them or new guidance, I get an email or I get a message that says, hey, there's a new guidance been published. And what'll happen is at the top paragraph of every one of those regulations, it'll say, here's the person who wrote this reg, like name, phone number, email, and here's where you respond for comments. And then you go in and you go back through regulations.gov and you publish your comments. They become public record. They're there. Anyone can see them. But it's very transparent, and you can publish your comments in there.
I did not realize it was that easy.
It's actually they've done a really good job of making a simple process to get public comment.
I was just about to say, for the federal government, that sounds like it's about as easy of a process as it could be.
Yeah, and we've had conversations with regulators about, do you read it? How much do you read it? Those kind of things. And they said, there's two types of responses that they get. They get the form letters, where you've got an entity that's campaigning, and they basically attach their names, and they count those. Right? Okay. They say, we had this type of sentiment come in from 300 constituents, right? And then they have individual unique letters, right? And those count as one, but they look at the common themes and those kind of things. And when you go in and look at the regulations, it'll say some individuals commented or some feedback was, right? And it's a section called the preamble in the regulations. And every new reg that's published, it addresses almost every comment that comes in that was unique in its theme, they address and they respond to. And if it's really a very involved process. If you go look at it, some people think this is arbitrary and a random rule that came up, but you can go in there. You can see the thought process. You can see everything that's there.
How often do you see different rulings come out, or not rulings, but suggested regulations come out?
So every year, for example, on the federal marketplace, there is a product plan parameters for the new year that comes out. Right? Every year you get a new set of rules.
That's correct.
Right? And there's comment periods and things like that, and then you get a final rule usually 60 days later. Sometimes 30, sometimes 90, depending upon how they file it. But so there's an annual for that. Other times we get updated guidance, which is just they see something and they have regulatory authority to address it.
Changed.
And they change it, right? They check the box and they change the rule. So guidance is just that. It's an expectation of how things work.
That's right.
And you better adhere to it.
Don't cross our line.
Right. So, and there's usually not as much public comment on that, but oftentimes that comes from industry feedback from agency feedback or congressional feedback, constituent feedback. To create those rules.
Oh, I love it. Well, I appreciate you breaking that down too, because I know the average probably person listening to the show right now is not used to that process. So it's good to be able to hear that. So kind of again, you mentioned even getting checks from 6 different companies, but the same position and role. With the companies and the different things. I know the Nat Gen previously and Allstate. You see a lot of the carrier side of it too. I would almost say internally, even though that may not be necessarily in your chassis, but it's still part of your overall company. But you also see a lot of other companies as well, because you work with so many and put them on the platform. What are you seeing right now carriers looking at and kind of thinking from an AI side? Maybe let's start with how they can maybe build better products for their consumers. Maybe start with kind of that from an AI perspective, and we can jump to some other lanes as well.
I think some of what the industry does is it just comes down to basic analytics, right? What is my product, and who am I being quoted against? Where did I lose a sale? Those kind of things. And that's where a platform like Quotit, because we have some of that comparative data, can help our carrier partners to give those insights. That's right. I think some of the tool sets that we're coming out with around kind of that AI data management and say, hey, this is a richer plan set, this is that. I think that also becomes useful for a carrier to start looking at their products and figuring out, where am I competitive?
I got data.
Right?
Yeah, it's great.
It's data, and it's market data, right? They can go out and gather that data themselves, but again, a lot of the actuarial departments, they're more focused on what's our experience, what's our loss ratio, what's our pricing going to be, and it's the world they know.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got the sales guys that are going, I'm 10 points higher than the other carrier across the street. I'm losing business.
There's 2 sets of data.
What can I do? And it's bringing those 2 sets of data together on the carrier side that I think, for example, National General, now Allstate Health, has done a really good job with in terms of they have their pricing and analytics teams very close to their sales teams, and they've been able to respond to market needs very quickly because those 2 verticals don't operate kind of in their own segments.
Are you seeing anything from potentially after the sale, like the policy issue or the consumer feedback directly from the carrier that people are using right now that's helping with that experience? Maybe even after the policy's been issued, keeping that client better engaged.
So I think, and this is I'll give the feds credit on some things here, right? On the federal marketplace, they mandated, right, that carriers provide, in essence, a book of business feed. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but there's a feedback loop to the broker to says, hey, this consumer's payment maybe is no longer valid, or this policy lapsed, or those kind of things. And it's across their book, right? It's every carrier that participates in the federal marketplace. I think we as an industry need to start offering that type of transparency to brokers across product carrier, lines. Right?
Yep.
And a lot of carriers have it in a portal. But I got to go log into that portal, and I got to find that, and I got to do that across 10 different carriers. So that's an area that I think the industry can work with our carrier partners to get better at, either creating a standard around book of business. I mean, it's you talk about being on the carrier side, right? Yeah. And NatGen and Allstate, huge property and casualty carriers. The property and casualty industry has done a great job of standardizing their communication mechanisms, using whether it's Accord forms, Accord being kind of a industry working group to identify and create data exchange types. But there's no kind of commonality in the insurance of people business, right? The insurance of things, they've got that figured out, right? They've got AL3 files, they have Accord forms, they have standardized ways to communicate carrier to carrier, future coverage, prior coverage, loss, all these kind of things, claims, it's all been standardized. Mm-hmm. People are trying to do that, whether it's with, the various health sides, Blue Button and FLIR and all the other kind of standards that are out there. Yeah. But so much of that is focused on the carrier side, claims management, payer side, provider side. There's not been a huge emphasis on the broker side. And I think that's where like some AI tools can potentially come into play, where, you're starting to standardize book of business data and get that data back to brokers, because I think a lot of agents want to provide great service to their customers. Right? They do. And whether it's, bringing in a different data source like NCOA, National Change of Address, to inform a broker that their consumers moved and they potentially qualify for an SCP event. Something that simple.
Simple,
right?
But profound. Yep.
And those are areas where I think, from how do we as brokers or how do we as technologists create a better experience for consumers?
That's good.
It's getting data into brokers' hands that they can make action. I mean, brokers are inherently salespeople.
That's right.
They're not actuaries. They don't live in a data world.
That's right.
But every sales guy I've ever interacted with, you give them data that they can take an action on.
That's right.
And they will.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So
they'll use that information in a good way. No,
correct.
I agree 100%. So kind of thinking even from a leadership standpoint, because this is the Insurance Leadership Podcast, how have you seen AI be used from a leadership perspective? Have you seen it from the people in the way that leaders are managing their teams right now and trying to better understand their employees? Or have you seen anything from like a common leadership maybe skill set that
Sure.
AI is helping empower, or AI is helping change, or have you looked at that?
When you talk about kind of people management,
Right.
I think that's an area that as managers or as leaders, you
Yep.
go, I love that. I want to manage, right? But as an employee, it's can be a little creepy or a little overbearing or whatever
Yep.
the case
That's
may be, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's controlled environments where we've seen it have an impact. Call centers are a great example
Yes.
of that, right? Captive distribution where you know your calls are already being recorded.
That's right.
Right? There's some information out there as it relates to salespeople. If you run recordings of agents and you listen to the calls, which is what AI is doing, it's transcribing them.
That's right.
It has been found that in like professional services organizations, I'm going to lump insurance in with that, right? You know, CPAs, tax attorneys, et cetera, that 95% of the salespeople will never ask for the sale. Now, I think that's true across the board, but that's always been anecdotal, right? People listen to calls, whatever. But now when you take and you do large language modeling and you bring it all in, right? And you start doing sentiment analysis, right? And you start looking at kind of the tone, the tenor, and the language that's being used, you'll find that a lot of salespeople don't ask for the call. That's a coaching opportunity.
Yes, that's right. That's
that becomes an opportunity to say, okay, let's improve our training.
It's back to
let's
data.
Look at those kind of things.
The leaders having the data to be able to help improve their team. Yeah,
and
that's great.
where AI has had a huge impact on that, whether it's companies, I think last time we talked, I've mentioned like Balto or Clarebridge, which is now part of Qualtrics, or others that do that kind of language modeling. Imagine being, as a manager, being able to take a call center of 20 people and have a transcription of every call that happened.
Oh man!
And you want to know what products were presented. Well, you can go in and say how many calls talked about Humana. Now, without having somebody sit there and like search word for word
or listen for 19 minutes.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so now you can create a dashboard that says what presented products dashboard.
Wow.
Every agency looks at sold products.
Wow.
But what was presented?
Wow.
Right? Oh, we presented Humana 53% of the time, and we've presented Anthem 47% of the time. But we sold X carrier, I'm not going to pick one or the other, 83% of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's data that as a manager, you can look at that and go, okay, so am I now, how should we better coach the teams? And then the other piece is sentiment analysis. And I think we talked about this a little bit last time where I'm looking at compliance. Right, as a compliance guy, I, especially on the Medicare side, where I have a script, right? I have a telephonic enrollment script.
That's right.
If I can give every call a compliance score based upon how did I hit the words?
That's right.
Right? Did I hit the words in the script? What questions were asked?
Yep.
Right? Those kind of things. And I can come back and say this agent has a 98% compliance rating, or this agent has a 100% compliance rating, or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
Again, that's very powerful data for me as a manager to
That's
go,
right.
Here's where I have opportunities to retrain.
Oh, I love it.
Or those kind of things. And it's not me as a manager sitting there listening to calls and doing QA scoring.
That's
and
right.
Kind of all the traditional things. So it creates huge efficiency opportunities.
I can't tell you all the times that we've had, maybe someone call in, hey, I wasn't told this.
Right.
And you got to go back and listen to the call, right?
100%.
Maybe a 37-minute call, and you're like, you got to listen to the whole thing to make sure that what they said is incorrect or correct. And that would be huge in that, huge from a sales standpoint, because we do record our calls. One thing we implemented last year to go into effect for March of this year, 2024, is we are doing AI calls for our payment changes. And they have got a way, I listened to the call because at first I was like, I don't want to talk to a robot. I don't want our people having to talk to a robot. The voices now that they have, you could talk to Bubba from South Mississippi, or you can talk to the Jersey. And you can even pair voices based off zip code or area code ranges. It's just like, it has changed so much. Even from that perspective, we were looking, I think it was 37% of our calls were address changes, payment changes, or requests for ID cards. Yeah. Well, they're typically only 3 to 4 minute calls at most.
Right.
But the number of them, if you can run those through a trunk line that's, got it set up where you're speaking to Bubba or you're speaking to the Jersey guy or whatever the case may be, you have just saved, from a customer service standpoint, so much time.
And customers are going to report it's a better experience.
Better experience. They ask the right question every time, and it's you know, from being from Mississippi, sometimes I can mumble a little bit and have a little bit of a Southern accent. And so from that standpoint, having someone who speaks the language, people want to be spoken to in a manner in which they speak, right? And so it's kind of one of those things. Now that's, you know, for us, we're looking at AI right now and trying to figure out how we can incorporate it more throughout our company. And people have said, do you think it's going to get rid of your customer service teams? No. We don't think we don't see a single person needing to go anywhere. We want to hire more, but we might reposition based off the things that we can automate to a better efficiency standpoint. What are you seeing here and thinking in the industry from that standpoint?
I think it's a skill set elevation.
Yes.
Is really what it comes down to.
Well said.
Right?
Well said.
Is you're able to take the monotonous and the routine and create an experience that, you know, customers are comfortable with, right? Especially if they get the feedback loop. You know, you do a payment change.
That's right.
Push me an SMS that says I got my payment change, right? I'm confident in the process.
That's right.
But that also then elevates the skill set, which now your customer service reps, your frontline, they're taking more complex questions, right? Which ultimately builds, I don't want to say better people, right? Because they're not focused on the monotonous. They're problem solving, which creates better job retention. So because people are engaged, right? Because it's not the same. I got to do 500 payment address changes today. That's not fulfilling, right? I mean, maybe there is somebody out there that is fulfilling for them for a job. But for most people,
that's right.
Right? They need personal growth.
That's right.
And they need to be challenged.
That's right.
And doing an address change is not challenging, right?
That's right.
And so if you look at kind of some of the number one reasons people change besides compensation, is because I wasn't being challenged in my position, or I wasn't learning, or I wasn't growing. And when you start looking at kind of some of those very entry-level positions, why are they entry-level? They're entry-level because they're repetitive. That's right. But to provide opportunities for growth, you get to more complex questions. You start building knowledge. Knowledge creates career growth, right? Because if you can start handling those complex questions, right, then you have a next bridge to the next thing. And so I actually look at AI and saying, it's going to force us as humans to transcend, up our game, and become better at what we do and how we interact, right? And so, you know, we'll get comfortable with interacting with a machine on the monotonous. That's right. But I think there's always going to be a place. Even, you know, people are trying to AI the crap out of insurance shopping right now. Yeah. There is no replacement for an agent.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I think Zenefits learned that lesson the hard way.
Well said there.
There's no replacement for an agent. But I think AI will actually force us as humans to up our game.
So here's get a personal question for you.
Sure.
How have you used AI personally in your own life to kind of maybe simplify something or knock something out for you?
So I think there's the novelty of it.
Yeah.
You know, write me a 10-paragraph essay comparing Star Wars with the Bible, right? Or something like that, right? Okay, once the novelty wears off, so we took a family vacation over the holidays here. And it was a cruise. We went to some islands and places I've never been.
Very cool.
Give me a itinerary for a family for 5 hours on the island of Aruba, right? Or whatever it is.
That's smart.
And it goes, okay, here's the top things to see. Boom, 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 boom. We recommend doing it in this order so you can, you know, traverse this way. Come on. I mean, that was hours awesome. As a dad. That was hours of research.
Yeah, that's right.
To make sure I had an itinerary ready for our family.
And submitting 10 lead forms on these different travel platforms to get the information. Yeah.
Right. So that's how I've personally used it. I think I mentioned a little bit like in Excel and Word, and starting to play with Copilot.
That's right.
All those kind of things.
That's right.
You know, and again, that's credit to Microsoft and some of these companies that have invested in those tool set. Because it definitely makes us more productive. But again, we have to up our game as humans.
That's right. That's right. My brother's figured out a way to be able to help do his personal finances with AI and pull it from this spreadsheet, pull them for this spreadsheet. Kind of, a lot of stuff I think you were talking about earlier. It's been pretty neat from that standpoint. So kind of getting to the end of the episode, what are you most excited about that you think, obviously you've talked about AI upping people's game and the things that will automate and some of the monotonous things that it can kind of do for us and other things like that. What are you most excited about in 2024, kind of futuristic thinking? Maybe it's not even exactly AI, but just something that you're most excited about, you see coming down the pipeline to help better the overall insurance industry.
So I'm a technologist at heart.
Yep.
Right. And so
I guess that. Yeah.
So I look at anything that creates change as an opportunity, right? And I think the biggest opportunity for this industry is the up and coming crop of agents, right? There's a lot of old guard that are now passing some knowledge on.
Yep.
And that group of agents that are now kind of entering in that 30 to 35 kind of typical entry career level for insurance agents, they are digital first, right? I'm one of the last ones. My generation was kind of we had an analog childhood, and we had a digital adulthood, right? We're now starting to get that generation of digital first coming through, and the expectation. And so I'm excited that carriers, more so than anything, respond to their agents, and at least the good ones do.
They should be listening. That's right.
And those agents are pushing technology, and they're asking the questions to those carriers: Why can't we do it that way? Right? And carriers go, well, because we've never done it that way.
That's right.
And
We'd have to make a change.
So from a where do I see in 24 and 25 is I think we're going to start to see a bit of a shakeout of those that embrace technology and the digital agent, more so than ever before. I think there's great opportunity and change. And our industry is seeing, the last 10 years, from the first, we're at the 10th anniversary of kind of ACA going live, 2013 to 2023. Our industry still hasn't moved a lot.
No, I agree with you.
In 10 years.
I agree.
But it's gonna have to start picking up. And I think 24, 25, 26 are going to start being some watershed moments for our industry from just integration, technology, working together from that kind of standpoint, and getting data back in front of agents and agencies. So I'm excited about for what the future holds.
That's right.
Yes, I happen to manage a business that profits from technology, so of course I'm biased and I want to see change and those kind of things happen. But again, and that's why I think I prefaced with I'm third generation in the insurance industry.
That's right.
I mean, I grew up with a dad doing spreadsheets.
I love it.
For his group clients.
I love it.
And who still calls me on occasion and says, hey, can you help me get this Excel spreadsheet worked out?
That's right.
So,
which then gives you an idea for
which then sometimes gives me an idea for something to put in a product or whatever the case may be. But I think we're here to serve customers first and foremost, meet their needs, and secondarily, how do we interact better as humans?
Man,
and
I love
think
it.
AI and the insurance, it's a great.
Something to be excited
for.
I love it. Well, kind of last thing I got for you today, in your 20 years of being in the business, what would you say is your favorite either leadership quote or leadership experience, or maybe even the best leadership lesson you've learned over the years?
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to be mentored by some really great individuals when I was at the University of Southern California, went through their entrepreneur program. Okay. We had Paul Orfalo, who was the founder of Kinko's, in there. Howard Schultz, who's the founder of Starbucks. And so there were definitely some quotes that stuck with me, right? One of Paul Orfalo's quotes was, happy fingers make happy registers, which means, first and foremost, take care of your employees, right? Being a leader, more than anything, is inspiring people to want to go to battle with you.
That's right.
Right? And so for me, I always kind of come back and say, how do I create a great culture? How do I create a great team environment?
Yep.
Because I know we're going to face challenges as an organization. When Allstate came out and announced the sale of the accident health side of the business, which we're a part of, I went to my leadership team and said, guys, we've done this. Yeah. This will be, for some of us, it'll be our fourth paycheck from the same job. But it's creating that culture, right? I've got a lot of leaders that have been with me for many, many years. Yeah. And, I think creating that culture, happy fingers, create happy registers.
Agree.
Which create happy customers.
Yep.
Right? Another one other quote I'll leave you with. It's an old one.
Please.
From I believe it was credited to Thomas Edison. Somebody may correct me on that. Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. I think that embodies the technology industry as a whole, because you can have a guy with an idea.
That's right.
But taking that idea through execution That's
the real deal.
That's the real deal.
Yep.
And there's some great leaders out there that have been able to take an idea
Yep.
and execute, or take someone else's idea and just frankly execute
Yep.
on it.
Yep.
But those are kind of two
great,
kind of
man.
leadership type of thoughts that I harken back to.
Happy fingers. I like that. That's good. I never heard that one before.
Yeah.
Man. Well, look, appreciate you so much being on the show today. Guys, thank y'all for tuning in. Remember, a good plan today is better than a great plan months from now. Thank you so much for tuning in.